Fleming and Lana Popham, they're saying, yes, this is important. And this is the time right now, because we're going into a federal election campaign. At FCM, the delegates were asked to support the resolution that governments at all levels take action to work on the housing crunch. By passing this resolution, by writing a few letters right now, we are adding our weight to that case. And I would ask my members to support the resolution as it stands and not wait until September.
Councillor Redmond.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I believe everyone around this table and probably everyone in the room here tonight supports affordable housing in the different forms. And I think we, like has been said, I think we have to look at what is being done. And we talk about working together, we talk about cooperation, and yet we're saying we've got to get our letter in. We can't work with the CRD because we want to get a letter in now. It's important that we get it in now. But I think it can work against us. And maybe I heard it wrong, Councillor Hayes, but I would like to see us work together with the CRD and follow up with a letter to them and not to all levels of senior government. I do have concerns. I guess the question I would ask is that, coming back to your committee too, I think coming back to Saanich, I think it would be good if we could hear from the members of your committee as to some of the ways that we as a municipality, even though we might call it downloading, but how can we contribute to affordable housing as a municipality? I believe there are small steps that we can take, and if we start down the road, they will look much bigger. And I hope you will take it back to the committee and review them. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I think I'm going to support the recommendation and the resolution since it talks about low-income members and a supplement for the 20,000 low-income members. My one concern is that most certainly we want other levels of government, province and the federal government, to be involved in the provision of affordable housing, without question. Co-ops are a part of that solution. My one concern is that I may find out in September that there are other approaches that are perhaps potentially more efficacious in that respect than this one in front of us today. However, this isn't huge. We're talking about a supplement program for 20,000 people, which given across the whole country virtually is not an enormous amount. So I think I can support it, but I would offer an amendment that this report also be referred to the CRD and the processes concerning affordable housing that are taking place there.
I welcome that amendment.
You want to second it?
And I'll second it.
Thank you.
Discussion on the amendment now. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That amendment is carried unanimously. Now we're back on the main motion. Any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So that's the last item of business on the regular portion of our council meeting. I'll now call for a motion to adjourn council, move to committee of the whole, and invite Councillor Gordon up to the chair.
Move adjournment. Second.
Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Members of the audience might be wondering why we're doing this. We rotate through our council for committee of the whole. It's just a long-standing practice of council.
I'd like to invite each one of you to our committee of the whole, or to committee of the whole meeting tonight. And thank you for taking the time and for taking time to come out and share with us and listen to what we have to share. The process is as follows. I will ask the clerk to introduce each item, after which council will be given an opportunity to ask questions of staff. I will then ask the applicant to present their application, following which I'll invite public input. If you'd like to address council, please come forward, give your name and address, and if you would keep your comments to within 5 minutes, it would be appreciated. After everyone has had an opportunity to speak, I'll ask the applicant to return to the microphone, and if there are questions that have been asked by yourself or by someone in the audience, it will be answered at that time. Madam Clerk, first item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This first item is 4664 Cordova Bay Road. It's an application for inclusion in the sewer service area. The report of the Director of Engineering is recommending that Council not approve the request for extension of the sewer service area to contain the building and footprint for that property at 4664 Cordova Bay Road.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members, staff. Craig Bryden and my wife Lindsay Bryden, owners at 4664 Cordova Bay Road. We're hoping to get our house we're currently building to be included in the sewer service area. When we bought the property, we had intent to demolish the existing residence and build a new residence in a similar location on the lot. I kind of looked over the bylaw. I knew there was a sewer connection on the property currently. I read the bylaw that states all those parcels of land or portion of parcels of land located within the sewer service area shall be served by a sanitary sewer. I interpreted that as there was a portion of my land in the sewer service area and I would be able to connect. Didn't think too much about it. My wife went in, applied for a demolition permit, and was informed at that point that we wouldn't be allowed to connect. She did speak with the staff member there, said that it shouldn't be a problem if you write a letter to the Director of Engineering because a portion is in that it probably would get expanded for us. So we went about and did that. We were denied, or the report came back saying they were denied just because the bylaw states clearly that it isn't in the sewer service area and they can't expand unless there's a health concern. Further to that, we started speaking with some neighbors directly just during the process of building who informed us of on the map. You can kind of see there's this is our lot here. You can see these other lots that have been included that run all down Blenkinsop that were previously outside and were on septic and had septic issues and then were connected to sewer at a later date, to my understanding anyway. So my wife contacted the Island Health Authority, spoke with Irwin Dick there, who was the man who head up the properties on Blenkinsop. He went and did a site visit at our property, came back, recommended that we should be connected to sewer because he feels it will be an issue. I have a letter somewhere in there. So I guess that's about where we stand at the moment. We're left with our property our house sits approximately 150 feet behind the urban containment boundary line, which also is the sewer service area line. We're asking that, seeing as the current connection is on our property, there'll be no expense to Saanich in any way or to any residents, that we be granted to connect to that based on the fact that there is a potential health concern according to the Island Health Authority, and it seems crazy to us that we'd be told to connect even though there is a potential health concern. So I guess I'm leaving that up to the council here to take that as they wish and hopefully side with us on this.
Thank you very much. Council didn't have an opportunity on this one to ask questions of staff before the applicant came forward. Are there any questions of staff that you'd like to ask? Councillor Plant.
Thank you, Chair. This is through you to our Director of Engineering. I note in our agenda package, one of the pieces of correspondence back to the applicant refers to the fact that the survey being done in 2002 that indicated there had been problems with septic in the region. And I'm curious if you can express to us, in perhaps layman's terms, what the effects since 2002 are that would perhaps make the rendering from Island Health not as relevant now.
Sure, thank you through the chairperson to Councillor Plant. Back in about early 2000, there was a different policy in place at that time, and much of the area that the applicant is talking about was included in the service area at that time. I would say the policy was a little bit less strict. We did have some issues along the Blenkinsop Road with some current on-site disposal systems. Since then, in 2003, around that time, in combination with the regional growth strategy, our policy was refined a bit, and as a result, has been a bit more strict. So the policy now doesn't permit, unless there's a current health problem existing on the site, which at this point we don't have evidence that there is.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a question to the engineering department as well. I noticed in here the letter from their engineer, Wayne Halverson. He comments that the applicant to get the building permit has submitted an on-site sewage system design to Island Health, and I imagine that was passed by Island Health. There's nothing in here. So can you just clarify that, that plan?
Yeah, that's correct. Through the chairperson to Councillor Sanders. Part of the building permit application, an on-site disposal system was designed and submitted, so it verified to us that it was possible to put in a system. And currently, the letter that we have from VHA explains that although they would encourage it, they're not saying it's a current health problem.
Councillor Hayes.
So, through the chair to Harley. Harley, you're saying a current health problem. If we reflect back to 2002, when there was a health problem, and the houses in that area, in that valley area, were not able to get good perk. In the absence of a good perk, they couldn't function correctly in the septic system, so they were allowed to hook up to our sewer system. So you're saying there isn't a current health problem, because is it possible it's because there is no septic system there yet that could fail? But by putting a septic system in there, in conditions where we have a letter saying the ground isn't ideal, and there's, on their evaluation now, and there's a history in that area of systems that failed, shouldn't we apply the precautionary principle and avoid harm, and say in this case, we should waive that bylaw and allow them to hook up to sewage, on the precautionary principle that it might fail, and then 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're back to saying, okay, we've got a failed system based on today's decision, when we could use the precautionary principle and allow them to hook up at their cost. There is no cost to Saanich here.
Through the chairperson, Councillor Haynes. Today, when we look at the site, and you keep saying that there may be potential, but I have to look at the policy. And the way the policy is written today is that there isn't a current health issue. And the way VHA has given us a letter, they've talked about in the surrounding area, there's been issues with soil, but not necessarily at this specific site. The ones that we did include previously in around Blenkinsop, many of them did have a health problem and had letters of support from VHA related to that. So today, when we look at what they provided as far as a building permit application with an on-site disposal system, that on-site disposal system, the environmental operator who would have designed that would have looked at the site characteristics of the property as well, and would have considered if there was something special that would warrant that it wouldn't be possible to do so.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gerwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, to the Director of Engineering. There was an existing dwelling where the applicant wishes to build a new dwelling, was it not?
The chairperson to Councillor Dermond, that's correct, there was.
Yeah, and I presume that existing dwelling was on a septic system.
I believe there was.
Do we have any indication that there was a health problem with that older system or a failure of it?
Not at this time.
So presumably then, for some long period of years, the area was served successfully with the septic system. And so I'm not so sure that in that case the precautionary principle would apply. Thank you.
Councillor Plant.
Thank you again, Chair. This is a question through you to our Director of Planning. And I'm just wondering if you could provide a little bit of a historical context of how properties came to be partly included in inside of the service and not on the other half of the property. And I apologize if that's a question that is prior to your employment with the district, but I'm just trying to reconcile the concerns I have of the resident that half of their property is, but literally the other half is not.
I'll answer the first part and then pass it back to the Director of Engineering, who may want to flesh out my response. In terms of how I'm aware of why properties are partially in and partially not, in some cases it's because we've tried to capture just the developable area, the existing house. We've become more refined over the years, and you'll actually see now footprints just defined rather than the front half of a property. So there's one potential scenario. The other scenario is where the property may draw differently, so you may be able to have some of it serviced by by gravity to a main, and the remainder you can't. So you'll see some of that along the Blue Ridge area in the western portions of the district percentage. But I pass this on to the Director of Engineering to respond or enhance.
All I would add to that, further to that, is part of the sewer service area, especially we can see the line if the applicant has provided that map along the Orgova Bay Road, also followed largely what the urban containment boundary already existed as. And then you can see along Blenkinsop, as the Director of Planning has indicated, just the footprints of the home have largely been identified.
I wonder if I could ask one question of engineering. Again, I didn't really understand. I'm sorry, Aaron.
Thank you. I actually had my hand up late, so thank you for that. I had a question for our Director of Engineering through you. What is the direction that the region is moving in with regards to regulations, CRD or the province or otherwise? Are we moving in the direction of sewer systems versus septic? Or is the province and CRD encouraging more septic systems to be built?
Through the chairperson to the mayor, I think that would be difficult to answer. I think in our case, largely it's dictated on the urban containment boundary, and so that's what's dictated, whether you're going to be on-site disposal as part of the sewer service system. More than, I think, a regional direction where we might be going. It's the urban containment boundary that gives us that boundary.
So understanding the differences between the urban containment boundary, this property finds itself partly in and partly out. But if we were to allow for a subdivision where currently there isn't one, and it was outside the urban containment boundary, and council decided to expand it, would we simply be going by the letter of the law that we have? Be putting in a septic system for those homes, or would we expect those homes to be on septic tanks?
So just to clarify your question, Mr. Mayor, you're asking if there was development occurring outside the urban containment boundary and it was multifamily in purpose, that we would be asking them to do an on-site disposal system? Yes.
And if we expanded the urban containment boundary and then had the subdivision, then what would we do?
Then we'd be asking them to connect to the system.
So it seems only a matter of the OCP policy then?
That's correct.
But then how does the OCP policy, if I can ask a further question, how does the OCP policy then contend with these properties that are half in and half out? They're neither one nor the other, and we seem to be biasing it one way or the other.
The OCP itself uses the urban containment boundary, and you'll see it match up with sewer service area, and it was really meant that anything inside is something for future development. If we had something outside, you might see a minor adjustment. When we start getting into the major adjustment, you'll actually notice that the languaging refers it back to the CRD for further review and investigation. So I don't think it's quite as simple as just assuming future subdivision would mean that we would include it. The question, I think, is whether or not we would support the subdivision.
All right, well, thank you for clearing up that policy. Thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Hayes, wrap all your questions up.
Yeah, very good. Through the chair, maybe to the Director of Planning, please, Sharon. You mentioned in your explanation previously that the way the property lines are being drawn back in when this was done allowed that line to cut through the property. But I picked up, I think, a small suggestion that if we were to redo them today, we might have a different approach. And I'm just wondering, for example, those properties that in 2002 were connected to the sewer line, presumably now the boundary would be drawn around to include those in our sewage enterprise area. And so this particular property here is trapped in an older way of drawing those lines. Thank you.
I'm not sure at this point, without further investigation, that it would be fair to say what particularly impacted this development and why the line is where it is. I was just giving generalized examples of how some properties were captured and some were not. To actually be able to say that on this property, we'd have to do a fair amount of investigation into the details of how it came to be that way.
One last point of clarification, please, Chair. So, Director of Planning, so then if the house was 150 feet closer to where the sewer line is, and so that you could capture the sewer line, there would be no problem, of course.
If it would fall on inside the sewer service area as currently drawn, that is correct.
Just one question I'd like to ask of engineering. Looking at the fact that this is a single lot, should I, council, or the residents of Saanich be concerned where the house goes on that lot? Other than we have a bylaw saying we can't connect, from a common sense point of view.
Maybe, Mr. Chairperson, I'm not sure that the question of maybe clarifying in what way, because I'm not sure I could give my point of view in that. What's your...
What's my question?
Yeah.
I can't speak for council, I can't speak for our residents. But I look at it as a single lot, and just putting it bluntly, do I really care where the house sits on that lot? We're allowing one house to be connected, whether it's within the sewer enterprise area or just outside it. There's only one house that is being connected. And that's a question. Should I be concerned?
Chairperson, that would be, I couldn't say that you should be concerned or not, but I think what you're asking here is looking at, for staff, when we're looking at this, if it was within the urban containment boundary in the sewer service area, we could provide recommendation for it. If you're asking why those lines were put where they are, I think as the Director of Planning has stated, we would probably have to look at that a little bit closer and report back to Council on why those lines are established the way they are. Today, just looking at how the policy was written in the OCP, this home is outside that policy, and given the current conditions of that site, we could recommend that it could be included in the sewer service area.
Thank you. Would any members of the public like to speak to this item? Council. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have had similar issues like this come before us, but none of them are ever quite exactly the same. And while I hear colleagues trying to get staff to turn into pretzels to try and figure out how possibly they could justify their position, I'm going to try something on here and see if it flies. I have any idea if able to get a seconder. I'm going to move that the extension of the sewer service area to contain the building footprint of proposed home on the property of 4664 Cordova Bay Road be approved and that a covenant be required to prohibit future subdivision.
Second.
Councillor Brace.
I think this is one of those cases where I totally support the staff's decision, because they are indeed following the direction of this council and the way in which we want to go. This is a somewhat unique situation, given that the sewer service area and the urban containment boundary actually cut through the property. The homeowner had offered up that they would be prepared to prohibit any future subdivision, and in my analysis of it, I think that is a fair and adequate way to deal with this matter. It will allow them to build their home and enjoy their property in the manner in which they wish to. On the other hand, it will ensure that no future council is faced with the fact of having to have further development on this property and exacerbate the situation.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Through the chair, and I'd like to actually talk to the issue of the covenant and also the comments of Councillor Wergeland, because there is only one house on here right now, and the covenant will ensure that that's the case. And my understanding of the urban containment boundary is to stop urban sprawl. So there is no more sprawl because there is only one house. And I understand Councillor Derman's point of view, but I'm still concerned about the precautionary principle. We do not know that that land will fail in 5, 10, 15 years. We have an opportunity now to link up to the sewer, and I'm going to support this motion.
Councillor Brown.
Through you to staff, so I need a clarification. So the building permit was issued based on a sewage disposal system on site. So what does this mean now? You've been building, and so what has to happen?
Through the chairperson to Councillor Brown. In terms of how the building permit was issued and if there's any changes to the building permit,
Yeah.
we have to ask the Director of Planning on.
Can absolutely be accommodated quite easily depending on whatever decision the council makes this evening.
One more question if I could. So to the engineer as well. So can this be accommodated to this house based on gravity, or will they have to have pump installed to pump?
Yeah, through the chairperson, Councillor Brown. I would recall that it's probably gravity, but I just don't know at this point if it's one or the other. But based on what I know of Cadorba Bay Road and the positioning of that lot, I would assume they could be gravity.
Okay, thanks.
If I may, through the chair, I can confirm it is gravity. I visited the site, and I understand it would be gravity fed in my conversation with the owner. Thank you.
Councillor Derman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the engineer. I'm not sure how unique this property is in terms of this kind of situation in the area. And one of the things that we do when we build a sewer is to design capacity according to the expectation of what it will have to service. Do we have any potential concerns if other properties in a similar situation come forward and indicate their preference to hook up to the sewer system? We obviously have more than one property in the area, I would presume, where we have the urban containment boundary going through the property as this one is now. Does that potentially create an issue for us?
Through the chairperson to Councillor Derman. I haven't done the design analysis for it, but it's unlikely. There are some extra properties along Cadorba Bay Road in this area that are outside this sewer service area, but I don't think that's a significant amount of homes that are going to affect our system.
Thank you. Thank you. Given that answer, I will be able to support the motion. It's an unusual situation. I presume it's not heavily replicated throughout Saanich. And I presume that it doesn't become an issue of capacity in that respect. Thank you.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Councillor Woodland. I think this will be through to the planner. In the past, with these situations, we've approved the sewage system to go only in the building envelope. We've restricted to that. Would that be a normal thing to do?
Yes, it would, and that's what I believe is currently being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Black.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion. I think the fact that the ambiguity of having properties in and out is something that we as a council are going to have to, when they're half in and half out, look at. I think Councillor Bryce's solution, I also want to echo the fact that staff has done their job here, but this is a political decision to make this exemption and encourage the hookup, which I support, but it's not a reflection of the staff delivering a report that can't be supported.
Just one comment before we vote, and I say again, staff follows directions of council, and a recommendation they came with tonight is a recommendation, it's probably the only recommendation they could bring. But I also believe, and I think many of us believe, that there has to be flexibility in our system, in our bylaws. There will be unique situations that do come along, and when they do come along, I believe we have to look at it carefully, but I believe we have to consider it. Council, all in favor? Against? Unanimous. Next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This next item is 779 Blackberry Road. It's a rezoning and development permit amendment application. And the report of the Director of Planning is recommending the Council approve the application to increase the permitted commercial floor